Welcome. I'm posting this again as a recap for those of you that are working from home, and then those of you that are with me today can look back at these videos if you need. Okay. So we just administered the landscape camouflage painting assignment after talking about the group of 7, group of famous Canadian artists from the early 1900s that kind of coined Canadian identity in their artwork by painting iconic images of Canadian landscape, mostly from Algonquin and the surrounding up north regions and other areas in Canada as well. Okay. The point of this assignment is now to take everything that we've learned while experimenting with color in our color theory lesson in our previous class, applying it to our painting and our sketchbook, playing around with the color wheel, with color mixing to create tints, tones, shades, and whatnot, and earth tones using complementary colors. We're going to be applying all of what we know about color mixing to camouflage one of the original paintings by one of the original group of 7 members into a larger painting that is our own. So in layman's terms, you're making an extension of one of their original paintings using thinking, inquiry, your own creativity and imagination, as well as by extending elements and principles that you see in the original artwork and continuing off onto your canvas. Okay, and that includes a strong focus on color and color mixing to match the colors that you see in the original color palette of the artist that you've chosen to work with, as well as copying other elements that you see, like their use of line, their use of shape, their use of texture, and so on. Okay, so here are a few examples of assignments done in the past by previous students. Okay, they've taken an original piece by one of the group of 7 members and they've tried to copy the style that they see, whether it's very painterly or a bit more put together, and try to continue, okay, the painting off onto the watercolor paper seen in behind. Now this year we're working with acrylic paints, so we're not going to be working on watercolor paper, we're going to be working on canvas. But the idea is that you're camouflaging the original piece into your own background. And notice it is completely up to you what you want to do with the continuation of the image, so long as you're continuing things that are getting cut off on the edge of the frame in the original canvas, okay, you're okay. But what you want to do with the remaining space is up to you. So this student here decided to continue with a body of water. This student here decided to incorporate some land. Okay, again, sticking to water. And this student printed out their own reference image from home, and it printed out a bit more orange and warm, so I find that the continuation of the image looks a bit more like a desert, not a desert, a desert, as opposed to the original painting, which looked a bit more like a cooler scene. And this student got their print from me, so their colors were a little bit more on point. But regardless, both did a really good job with trying to match what they saw. Okay, a lot of people did this one in different variations of it, and so on. Okay, so this is our goal today. You're going to be choosing one of the images that I provided you with. As we know, there are hundreds of beautiful paintings in the actual collection from the group of 7 at the McMichael Gallery. But these are the ones that we've been working with today. So the first thing I asked everybody to do was choose their image and then to do a quick thumbnail sketch of it in their sketchbook. This is my thumbnail sketch. Okay, and just for the sake of doing a demo, I've decided to use Arthur Lismer's Evening Silhouette at Georgian Bay. I have the name of the artist and the title here. Some of you may not have received the title and the artist with your cutout, but I will provide you with that as well to add to your sketch. So a quick thumbnail sketch is kind of like a 30-second to couple-minute sketch. It's just a quick sketch to lay out the composition or what the subject matter is that you see in the frame that the artist has painted, okay? So you're laying out the composition. My subject matter in this piece is the windblown tree. I've got like an island, a rocky island, some water here, background, right? Land in the background, kind of a silhouette in the sunset. And I've got this really beautiful, colorful sky with some fluffy clouds at the top. And then I can choose to continue this image however I choose to, but I'm just going to map out what those basic things are in my quick sketch. And what I've done was made a quick note of the colors and shades that I see dominantly used in this piece. Okay, so there's a lot of browns and reds in the rocks. There's some orange and yellow in the sky. There's a reddish orange cloud in the back here. There's a teal, or my tertiary color label for a teal would be a blue-green, right? It goes into a clear blue sky, and I've got some violet gray clouds at the top. So now that I've noted what I see, and I've noted the colors that I see, I'm going to think back to my lesson on color theory from a couple of days ago. And if you need to pull out your handout from a couple of days ago just for a refresher, you can do so, okay? But I'm going to be thinking about how these colors apply to the color wheel, right? I'm taking note of what colors were used in this piece, and I'm kind of looking at where these guys are on the color wheel. So I do have some violet. I do have a dominant use of yellow, and kind of an orangey yellow, so this area here. Okay, I do have lots of blue being used. And I believe that's the major ones that stood out. Oh, I do have red, like a red-orange. Okay. So at this point, I'm kind of looking at the colors and I'm trying to see if there's anything that stands out to me in terms of the color schemes that I discussed the other day, okay? So if you need a refresher, our color schemes are all here. I'm thinking to myself, what color combination did this artist use to make this image work or visually pleasing, right? Was it complementary, analogous, triadic, split complementary, monochromatic, warm or cool, rectangle, otherwise known as tetradic, or square, right? And I'm looking here, and I feel like if I were to connect the dominantly used colors, I do get a strong rectangle, okay? So I feel like in this particular piece, okay, there's a lot of eye-catching emphasis added on certain, right, areas, especially in the sky in the background, because of the use of complementary colors. And you know that when there are, okay, when you use 4 colors that make a rectangle on the wheel, okay, there will always be 2 sets of complementary pairs. And, okay, looking back at my wheel, this is true in this case. I have strong use of violet and yellow in this picture, okay, which are opposite colors, complementary colors. They make each other pop. And then I also have a strong use of blues and oranges, which are also opposite colors, right? They complement each other. They make each other pop. They bring out the best in each other, okay? They make each other bolder. Okay, so this piece is quite bold to look at, okay? It's hard to look away from. It's very eye-catching. You wouldn't walk past it without probably staring at it for a bit. And also the sky is emphasized because there's a lot of use of cool colors all around, but then there's pops of complementary or opposite colors in the background where it's very sunny. Draws your eyes into that area, okay? So this is a perfect example of where the artist has used a split complementary color relationship. So I will note that in my sketchbook. Okay, for myself. And we'll take a quick gander at the other images that some of you might have used for yours. Okay, so if you did use this one, okay, you can note that it's by Arthur Lismer. Okay, and it's called Evening Silhouette of Georgian Bay. You can make a quick note for yourself. You can always look this up later on your own using Google image search. just as another reference of the colors used, or maybe look up some more work by Arthur Lismer if you did like this one. Okay, so this was rectangle or tetradic because there's a strong use of 4 colors, and again, within those 4 colors, we have 2 complementary pairs. This one here by A.Y. Jackson, okay, is called The Winter Road. The Winter Road, and this was a scene painted in Quebec in plein air fashion. One of the terms that we recorded during the lesson was plein air, actually, and I never discussed that. So plein air is basically, or maybe I have briefly touched on that, where the artist, again, would set their self up right in the midst of nature and actually paint live. So be there in the moment, trying to capture the beautiful lights and shadows of the scene and nature that they're kind of observing and recording, not working from a picture or anything artificial. Okay, so what do we see in this one? We see a lot of oranges. There's a lot of rusty kind of shades of reds and oranges in the background. And there's a strong use of blues and violets. Okay, so if I were to go back to my color wheel now and map out where those are, I've got a strong use of blues and violets and orangey colors. Okay, so they're not like, it's not blue, it's a little bit of an off blue, like a violet blue. So I have orange and a color that's almost like its opposite. What is this? Okay, if you guys remember, complementary color scheme is when you're using 2 opposite colors to create a very bold effect because the 2 make each other pop. But in order to make it a touch less bold, we could go split complementary, using a color in its opposite, but instead of using the direct opposite color, to look at that opposite color's next door neighbors, okay, variations of that opposite color. And I would say that this probably pulls on a split complementary because the opposite of that orange would be a very bold, clear blue, but instead of that, you've got a lot of almost like a tealy blue in the background and a violet blue in the foreground. Okay, so it still creates that sense of contrast with the complementary pairs, but a little less bold because it's split complementary. Okay, moving quickly through the rest of them, we have Morning Lake. And this one was by J.E.H. MacDonald. Morning at Lake O'Hara by J.E.H. MacDonald. If you want to look up more work from MacDonald, if you liked this piece, you can. You might have noted the lime green here, the yellows here, all kinds of variations of blue, okay? And we know that if we look back at the color wheel and we see a lot of blues, teals, greens, we notice that these are next door neighbors, colors that are adjacent to each other, colors that are next to each other, colors that are made up of the same primary, okay? So they all have something in common. They're very relaxed to look at together. There's no bold contrast here. They're very easy to look at, okay? So this would be what color scheme? Starts with an A. Analogous, perfect, right? So if you envisioned this being a pizza, you'd be grabbing 2 or 3 slices that are right beside each other. You're not going to reach for a random slice around the pizza. Otherwise, that's very different. You're going for a color and its next door neighbors, okay? So this piece, really easy to look at, enjoyable to look at because it's very calm with the blues and the yellows and the greens that are analogous to each other, okay? We have this one here. This one was quite popular. You'll notice very quickly that this one was just focused on a variation of different blues. And we know that when we focus on just one color on the color wheel and variations of that color, tints, tones, and shades of that color, okay, we have a monochromatic color scheme, variations of one single color. And this makes us focus in on what the subject matter is, rather than getting lost in the colors. So it's very simplistic, but it's got a very powerful effect with the use of monochromatic here. So this one here was by Harris, If you really liked this one, you might want to look up more of Harris's work. It's very clean cut and bold in terms of the shapes being used to outline the subject matter, as opposed to some of the softer textures in some of the other paintings.